Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Congressman Jack Bergman, a member of the For Country Caucus. Congressman, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Great to be with you.
It is great to have you, especially during this time, because we're coming up on Memorial Day, a solemn occasion where the nation remembers those who made the ultimate sacrifice while serving our country. You're marking the day with a now annual tradition with some of the members of the For Country Caucus, a bipartisan group of lawmakers who are also veterans. And you're marking it before the weekend begins. So can you talk to us about the event you're participating in?
Sure. Well, number one, thanks for the opportunity to tell the story of what the For Country Caucus does and what the bipartisan nature of it is, and the veterans here to the 90% level in Congress who participate in the annual Vietnam Wall washing. In fact, case in point, there are only 3 Vietnam veterans still serving in Congress. Nobody in the Senate after Ben Cardin retired last year. So you've got Mike Thompson from California, Jim Baird from Indiana, and me. We're the only 3 Vietnam vets left. So we'll all be there tomorrow to wash the Vietnam Wall. And when you say wash it, don't think of washing your dishes or washing your clothes or washing your car. This is where we actually will touch the names of those 58 some thousand veterans who gave their lives for our country during Vietnam. And to touch the wall, to cleanse the wall is kind of number one, a remembrance as it relates to Memorial Day. But it's also, for those of us who served in Vietnam, it's a reconnection with some of those names on the wall that we either served with, grew up with, people that we knew in a lot of cases long before the military, but whose names are on the wall. So it's a very solemn event.
I want to talk about that a little more. I've visited the wall before when I was in DC. I've seen coverage of this event before. And just by seeing it and thinking of it, it's just so powerful. But you're only one of the 3 Vietnam veterans in Congress. Specifically, when you're there, when you're hand washing this wall, when you're touching the different names that you know, your brothers that you fought beside. I mean, what does that feel for you? What does this event really mean for you?
Let me just say, for the longest time, when I went to the wall, now we're talking decades, but when I went to the wall, I went alone because I was there as one of a triangle of 3 entities: myself, the person who I was visiting at the wall, whose name was there, and God. And I preferred to go there alone to just think about the sacrifices that had been made by those people who I was visiting on the wall. And then as I looked at the great expanse, all those others who had personal relationships, in their lives that they're no longer of this earth. But when you look at the wall, and it's really tough to imagine until you see the whole thing in different perspectives, what a really spectacular job the designers of the wall did in creating a very solemn remembrance that our country can never forget of the sacrifices, the human sacrifices, the individual sacrifices that were made during the Vietnam War. So for me, it's a remembrance, it's a fulfillment. And it kind of charges my battery to work harder in what I'm doing now to make sure that the men and women who serve our country in peace or in war are trained, ready, and to go and fight and win, but also appropriately remembered for the next generations.
And it's a really important reminder of exactly what this weekend really means. And Vietnam veterans, in a lot of instances, were treated poorly by the American public during their homecoming. So what does this mean specifically for you, all these decades later, seeing this powerful act of reverence at this memorial?
Well, it's a chance for us, those of us who served, to tell those who protested us, didn't welcome us home, in some cases exhibited very bad human behavior that you could not be proud of. it's a chance for us to say to those folks who did that, you know, all you have to do to say to us veterans is, I made a mistake. You're good people. You served our country honorably, and I could have done better. If people get that message, then we're hitting the mark.
And Congressman, I want to say before we continue on this conversation, a big thank you from me for your service. A big thank you from our viewers, on behalf of the viewers, for your service. But as you mentioned at the top of this conversation, you're with a bipartisan group of lawmakers here, the For Country Caucus, and you're doing this together. Why do you think, especially the run up to this weekend, it's so important for the American people to see a bipartisan group of veterans washing this wall and participating in this really solemn act?
Well, the one thing I say almost every day, especially when I'm back at home in the district talking to constituents, is the only thing I feel bad for the American people for is that you do not see every day, all day, Democrats and Republicans here in D.C. working together, sitting around a table, trying to work out good policy and good law that is right for the United States and the American people. But that's not exciting. That's not cool. And this is not Democrat or Republican. It's just that the American people are not seeing those of us who came here to work with others to get good stuff done. So I'm kind of I never miss an opportunity to tell people that, and they go, really? Thank you for telling me. I had no clue.
And that's a lot of what I get. That's a very big theme from my conversations with other members of the For Country Caucus, both sides of the aisle. They say that all the time, that what happens behind the scenes, a lot of the American people don't see. As we know, there is a very spirited debate right now in the House over the reconciliation bill. Tomorrow, when you're hand washing the wall, what are you talking about? Are you going there? Are you talking about politics? Is politics put aside for that event? What does that look like?
Now, tomorrow when we're at the wall, we'll be with the National, Park Police and some other folks there who will give those people who are there a little background of how the National Park Service works, how they are tasked with, maintaining the monuments and all the memorials that exist here in D.C. But we will not be talking politics tomorrow morning while we're at the wall. We will be there to, again, participate in that very solemn exercise of cleansing the wall. And there's very specific instructions as to how we do that. And we are guided by the park police in our application of the wipes and the detergents we use. But it is something that makes all of us think a little deeper. And quite honestly, for those of us who served, we feel better about our country.
Congressman, even from someone who hasn't served their country, I am extremely moved by this event. I come from a family of veterans, so I will continue to be watching coverage as you, as well as the For Country Caucus, participates in the hand washing of the Vietnam Veterans War Memorial. I do now want to switch topics just for a few questions, if you don't mind. I want to ask about VA Secretary Doug Collins and the VA cuts that he has suggested. Members of both parties have said before that the VA does need some reform. Obviously, depending on what side of the aisle you are on, you think differently about how you want to restructure the VA. And you yourself are a proponent of the VA Budget Shortfall Accountability Act. VA Secretary Doug Collins wants to overhaul the VA, though, and his goal is cutting the department by 15%. This would impact tens of thousands of workers. So as a veteran yourself, as someone who's part of the Veterans Affairs Committee, what do you make of these cuts, as well as what do you make of his leadership?
Well, a couple of things. Number one, during the last administration, I worked very closely with Secretary McDonough on a number of issues. And I don't care who the Secretary of Veterans Affairs is. You're sitting atop an organization that is one of the largest bureaucracies in the federal government. The point of that is we have the Veterans Administration for one purpose and one purpose only: to serve the veterans, to provide the benefits and services for the veterans and their families and their heirs, depending how it plays out, but to do them in such a way that I'm going to channel my Marine side here, Marines are inherently cheap. Okay. We are frugal. And we are frugal because of one reason, that we know when we have resources available to us, we have to husband them very carefully and manage them so when we need them in the fight, they're there. And so the Marine Corps doesn't have a lot of bureaucracy. I'm kind of, and by the way, thank you for asking this question, because God rest his soul, Walter Jones, who used to represent Eastern North Carolina, congressman forever, every Congress, he would introduce legislation to create the Department of the Marine Corps, as opposed to being part of the Department of the Navy. We said, Walter, we don't want to be the Department of the Marine Corps. Let the Navy have all the bureaucracy. Just give us the tools to fight. Okay? The point of that is the VA can do a much better job in accomplishing its mission to serve the veterans by applying 21st century capabilities, digital. I could go into electronic health records, transfer of service records, all of those things that go into serving the veterans. But we are wasting time and money not serving the veterans because our bureaucracy in the VA, as well as other bureaucracies here in DC, is set up for a pre-digital area or time frame, if you will. So we are still doing things by hand, too many hands touching something. The veteran's sitting out at the other end going, where's my claim appeal? Where's this? Where's that? Well, we're working through the system. Hey, that's not what the VA is supposed to do. It's supposed to take the input in, turn the, if you will, the decision process around and give that veteran an outcome. And that's what Secretary Collins is trying to do. And again, Secretary McDonough tried to do the same thing in his own way, but we need to make sure that the bureaucracy within the Veterans Administration is focused on the veterans, not on itself as a bureaucracy.
And you're echoing exact sentiments that Secretary Collins said. I want to read his quote. He said this, quote, "We want to work with Congress to fix the VA, but our shared goals need to be making things better for the veterans, not protecting the department's broken bureaucracy." He also added this, that the VA is, quote, "an organization whose sole purpose is to serve veterans, and we must never lose sight of that." As a veteran yourself, how would you like to see Secretary Collins restructure the VA?
Well, I'd like to see him take a look at, again, I was a businessman too, working for large companies in the operating room equipment arena. So I was with large companies, medium size, started a couple of my own. And in the private sector, what you do if you're in business is you make sure your structure, your R&D, your manufacturing, your administration, your operations, your whatever it happens to be, is appropriately structured so that whatever product you're providing to the public is provided at a price and at a rate so that the customers will want to buy it and that you as a company can make a profit. Well, the VA is not, we're not trying to make a profit here. We're not talking about privatizing the VA. But what we're talking about is the more we can reduce the unnecessary bureaucratic costs in performing job functions that have been outdated by the advancements in digital capabilities that we have now, and take that savings in money and put it more towards veterans benefits, which is going to go right to the veteran. So it's about reshaping the organization, which is not designed really optimally to serve the veteran of today and tomorrow.
And Congressman, I would love to continue a conversation at a later point about the VA Budget Shortfall Accountability Act legislation that you have. But I do now want to just turn to some recent news, and that's the reconciliation bill. Speaker Mike Johnson wants to get what President Trump has touted as the one big, beautiful bill across the finish line in the House by Memorial Day. Speaker Johnson said this morning there's an agreement right now on SALT. Depending on an income level, there's a $40,000 cap. There's also a chance that there is a House vote on the bill tonight. The House Republicans can only afford to lose 3 votes. As of now, it looks like there's 3 people that aren't voting, that are no votes as of now. Do you think we're going to see a bill tonight, Wednesday night? And B, do you think this is passing? Where are you on this reconciliation bill?
Well, I'm on the budget committee. Okay, so I've got more time, personal time invested in reconciliation because we started as the budget committee right after the election in November to build the framework for the budget resolution that we ultimately passed. And when we did this framework, we basically did it as the Republican majority sitting in a room, putting it together, and the debate was among our Republicans. Then when we brought it to the floor, the debate occurred between the Democrats and the Republicans on the budget committee. But the point is, in our Republican deliberations, a couple of points. Number one, we want to make sure that we, kind of going back to my comments a minute ago on the Veterans Administration, we want to make sure we're not wasting money or spending money that doesn't need to be spent. So you heard the president said it countless times yesterday, and we've been saying it for a long time: waste, fraud, and abuse. And the idea of moving forward with this budget, number one, if you're a fraudster, and I'll say this to anybody, if you're defrauding the government, we're coming after you, okay? Because fraud is criminal, and we're going to prosecute. The abuse of budgetary responsibilities happens because the oversight of different departments is not close enough to say, hey, you're in charge of this particular line item, you're abusing what you're supposed to be doing. Where the real savings can come here, and we've identified literally in the trillions, is in the wasteful government spending, the improper payments, the checks that go out, or pots of money that are there but haven't been utilized, that are being sometimes reprogrammed to keep the money out of the sight of folks like us. So those of us who've got so much time invested in this, we know, is it going to be perfect? Absolutely not. But the one thing I can guarantee you in this case is that there'll be no cuts to Medicaid for people who need Medicaid and what Medicaid was designed for. Okay, so some of the language, the rhetoric that's out there is just it's a lie. But we are right there on this bill to do the one big beautiful bill, as we've come to know this, here in the House, to make sure that the Senate does what it does. Because not that we don't trust the Senate, but if we don't do our job in the House, we have to put the guidelines and the guardrails on what the Senate can do coming back to us. There are good people over there in the Senate. They're all working hard. They got a lot on their plate. But this is, a once in a generation, I think, chance to bend that curve, to reverse the curse, to really begin to draw down the wasteful spending that occurs just naturally in a bureaucracy that is allowed to just keep spending.
And Congressman, my last question to you, there seems to be really three sticking points, 3 points of contention amongst the Republican Party. You're saying Medicaid, if you need Medicaid, we are guaranteeing you we're not cutting that. That's one point. Second point is the SALT agreement and debates on the SALT cap. As of now, there's that $40,000 cap. That's another point. The third point is some more hardline Republicans are saying, hey, this bill actually adds trillions to the national deficit over the next decade. I mean, where do you go in that conversation? How do you get those Republicans to get on board?
Well, I think number one, let's talk about SALT, and that's very district specific. In my district, when people use the word SALT, they're thinking about, can they afford the groceries and go buy salt to put on their food? In the first district of Michigan, we're not getting wrapped too tight around the axle as far as if it's 10,000, 30,000, 40,000. It's kind of like, that's a very, very unique and small constituency that is deeply concerned about that. Whatever the SALT agreement will be, it will be what it will be. Okay. The idea of adding trillions to the debt, I will channel my inner Alexander Hamilton, who believed that one of the greatest books I ever read was Hamilton's Blessing by John Steele Gordon. And it talked about Hamilton's view of the financial system when our country was created, who believed that it's okay to take debt when you need it, but you need to pay it back. I think we've gotten so far in debt over here, we're not at that equilibrium point. I'm willing to take a little more debt on the short term to bend that curve in the long term of reducing. And it all starts with the size. I mean, the size of the federal government. The federal government is morbidly obese. And if people don't like that term, well, morbidly obese means you're going to die. And in this case, the federal government is morbidly obese. We need to get it back into an area of size and effectiveness that allows us then to really begin to tackle the debt down, next Congress or however this plays out. But I'm concerned about the debt. But how do you eat the apple? One bite at a time. So this is a great bite of the apple, of the dead apple. But we've dug ourselves in a pretty deep hole. It's going to take a while and some good policy making to get ourselves out of it.
Well, Congressman, we will leave it there. I'm sure you'll probably, at this point, want to be sharing that message with Congressman Chip Roy. There's a lot of conversations that you have on the reconciliation bill, and I hope that we can talk going forward. Congressman Jack Bergman, thank you so much. You are welcome back anytime.
Thank you. Great to be with you. I really appreciate the time.